I'm trying to make a really conscious effort to stop being so anal with my...
When people think of Adele, they often imagine the soulful singer with the powerhouse voice who pours her heart into every lyric. She's won countless awards, broken records across the globe, and earned a reputation as one of the most relatable artists of her generation. But behind her stunning ballads and heartfelt performances lies a far more complicated story, one that involves clashes, rivalries, and some very strong opinions about other musicians. Adele has always been refreshingly unfiltered. Unlike many celebrities who carefully guard their words to avoid controversy, she has never shied away from speaking her mind. Whether in interviews, on stage, or in casual conversations with fans, she often tells it exactly as she sees it. And while much of that honesty has endeared her to millions, it has also revealed that there are certain figures in the music industry she simply cannot stand. From fellow pop stars whose styles clashed with her own, to artists who dismissed her music early in her career, and even legendary names she once admired but grew disillusioned with, Adele has made it clear that not everyone has earned her respect. Over the years, stories of backstage tensions, biting remarks, and frosty encounters have painted a picture of a woman who, despite her charm and humility, is unafraid to call out what she doesn't like. So today, we dive into the surprising world of Adele's least favorite musicians. These aren't just minor disagreements, they're rivalries, disappointments, and full-blown feuds that reveal a side of Adele the public rarely gets to see. Get ready, because this list might just change the way you think about the Queen. When Adele first broke into the global spotlight with her debut album 19, she was celebrated for her raw talent and emotional authenticity. But as her fame skyrocketed, not everyone in the music world welcomed her with open arms. Two names in particular stand out as the earliest sparks of tension in Adele's career: Noel Gallagher and Katy Perry. Let's begin with Noel Gallagher, the former Oasis guitarist and notorious critic of modern pop. Gallagher is famous for his sharp tongue and blunt opinions, and Adele was not spared. Back in 2015, he launched a harsh attack on her music, calling it music for fucking grannies and accusing her of being overrated. For someone as grounded and sensitive as Adele, the comments stung deeply. She never retaliated publicly in the same aggressive tone, but insiders revealed she was both hurt and furious. Adele has always respected musicianship, and while she admired Oasis in her youth, Gallagher's dismissal of her artistry felt like a personal betrayal. Friends close to her said that for months she avoided even mentioning his name, insisting that some people are just bitter. The feud highlighted a generational clash, Adele representing the new wave of soulful, vulnerable pop, while Gallagher clung to the brash, guitar-driven world of the 90s. Then came Katy Perry. At first, there wasn't any visible animosity. But as Adele's career eclipsed many of her pop contemporaries, whispers of tension grew louder. According to industry insiders, Adele privately bristled at how commercialized Perry's image had become, believing that the endless focus on spectacle overshadowed the music itself. At one event in Los Angeles, Adele reportedly vented to a close friend, saying, "That's not music, that's a circus." Perry, on her end, wasn't oblivious to the subtle digs. While she never engaged in a direct confrontation, she was said to be annoyed by Adele's dismissive tone, especially given that both women were often compared in the press as the dominant female voices of their generation. The tension between Adele and Perry speaks to something larger in the industry: the divide between authenticity and showmanship. Adele has always positioned herself as a singer first, performer second. She doesn't rely on pyrotechnics, elaborate choreography, or flashy costumes to connect with her audience. Katy Perry, meanwhile, built her brand on colorful theatrics and over-the-top performances. To Adele, this represented everything she disliked about pop music: the hollow side of fame that distracted from true artistry. And though she's never named Perry outright in interviews, her comments about not wanting to be a product have often been interpreted as thinly veiled references. What these two rivalries reveal is the foundation of Adele's musical philosophy. She demands respect, not just for herself, but for music as an art form. Gallagher's dismissal felt like a rejection of her authenticity, while Perry's style represented the very kind of industry excess she has fought against since the beginning. Together, they became early examples of how Adele's rise to fame wasn't just about chart success, it was also about defining what she stood for, and just as importantly, what she stood against. By the time Adele had firmly established herself as one of the biggest stars in the world, her list of disliked musicians was only beginning to grow. These first clashes set the tone for a career in which she would continue to speak her mind, no matter who stood on the receiving end, and of heartbreak ballads forever. As Adele's career soared beyond anyone's expectations, she entered a new level of fame where every word she said and every opinion she held became magnified. By the time she released 21, her music was dominating charts worldwide, but her unfiltered personality ensured that not every star in the industry was thrilled with her success. Among the names that sparked tension were Madonna and Damon Albarn. Let's start with Madonna. The Queen of Pop has spent decades reinventing herself, pushing boundaries and commanding global attention. Adele, on the other hand, has always prided herself on being straightforward, traditional, and uninterested in reinvention for reinvention's sake. Their worlds collided when Madonna publicly criticized Adele's refusal to tour extensively in the early days of her fame. She reportedly remarked in private circles that Adele was wasting her prime years by being lazy, a comment that made its way back to Adele. For Adele, who had been balancing newfound fame with serious vocal health issues and her desire to live a normal life, Madonna's criticism felt deeply unfair. In interviews, Adele has often emphasized that her health and her son come before everything else. To hear one of the industry's most powerful figures dismiss her choices felt insulting. According to friends, Adele found Madonna out of touch and told her team she had no interest in collaborating with her. Ever. Then came Damon Albarn, frontman of Blur and Gorillaz, whose clash with Adele became one of her most infamous feuds. In 2015, while Adele was preparing her album 25, she reached out to Albarn to potentially work together. What should have been an exciting collaboration turned into a disaster. Albarn publicly described Adele as very insecure and claimed that the music they worked on was very middle of the road. These comments infuriated Adele. Not only had Albarn dismissed her work, but he had also criticized her character in a way that felt deeply personal. In her own interviews afterward, Adele didn't hold back. She called the experience one of the worst of her career and said Albarn's comments had left her devastated. She made it clear that their collaboration would never see the light of day. This feud struck a nerve because Adele had admired Albarn for years. His work with Blur and Gorillaz had inspired her musically, and she had reached out to him with genuine respect. To be treated dismissively in return not only hurt her feelings, but also hardened her resolve never to put herself in such a vulnerable position again. It was a rare moment where Adele allowed the public to see her anger, proving that even someone as grounded as she is has her breaking point. What unites these two clashes, with Madonna and Albarn, is the way they reflect Adele's unwillingness to compromise her values. Madonna's criticism reinforced Adele's belief that she should never let industry pressure dictate her life. Albarn's dismissal reminded her that respect must be mutual, no matter how legendary the figure. For Adele, these experiences weren't just about personal feelings. They became lessons in how to navigate a cutthroat industry without losing herself in the process. By this point, Adele's reputation was solidified. She was no longer the rising star, but she was the superstar. And with that status came even more encounters, some of which turned into relationships defined not by admiration, but by disappointment and dislike. By the time Adele reached the height of her 25 era, she had solidified her status as one of the most respected artists in the world. But that didn't mean she was immune to conflicts, and two names in particular became the focus of her sharp tongue: Chris Brown and Peppa Pig. Yes, you heard that right. Let's begin with Chris Brown, one of the most controversial figures in modern music. Their paths crossed at the 2013 Grammy Awards, an evening that was supposed to be a celebration of artistry and achievement. But Adele, who has always been outspoken against domestic violence, found herself in the same room as Chris Brown, whose reputation was marred by his assault on Rihanna. During the ceremony, Adele reportedly confronted Brown directly after he refused to stand and applaud Frank Ocean, who had just beaten him in a category. Cameras captured the tense exchange, showing Adele leaning in toward Brown with a stern expression. Though the microphones didn't catch their words, insiders later confirmed that Adele told him his behavior was disrespectful. The image of Adele wagging her finger at Brown quickly went viral, cementing her as someone unafraid to speak her mind, even in the most high-profile settings. For Adele, Brown represented everything she despised about entitlement and arrogance in the industry. While she never went on a public tirade against him, that moment made it clear she had no respect for him. And then there's the more unexpected feud, with none other than Peppa Pig. During a 2021 Instagram live session, Adele was answering fan questions when someone asked if she would ever collaborate with the beloved children's character. Adele laughed and bluntly replied, "No." What started as a joke quickly spiraled into an internet frenzy when the official Peppa Pig account responded, expressing disappointment. Fans turned it into a viral debate, with memes flooding social media. Later, when Adele appeared on a radio show, she admitted she felt bad about hurting Peppa's feelings, but still stood by her initial reaction, saying, "I can't believe Peppa Pig tried to make me feel guilty." It was a lighthearted moment, but it revealed something about Adele's personality. She has little patience for gimmicks, even when they come from a cartoon character adored by millions of children. What these two feuds, one serious and one comical, show is Adele's consistency. She doesn't tolerate disrespect, whether it comes from a Grammy-winning artist or a fictional pig. With Chris Brown, she drew a moral line, unwilling to ignore behavior she considered unacceptable. With Peppa Pig, she poked fun at the absurdity of celebrity culture, where even children's characters try to insert themselves into her orbit. In both cases, Adele's reactions resonated with her fans because they were genuine. She wasn't calculating or guarded. She was simply being herself, unfiltered as always. By this point, Adele had become known not just for her voice, but for her candor. Her dislikes weren't always about music styles or competition. Sometimes they were about values, respect, or simply a refusal to play along with the spectacle of fame. Whether she was confronting one of the most controversial stars in the industry or turning down a cartoon pig, Adele proved time and again that she would never compromise her authenticity. With 4 musicians already crossed off her list, only 2 remain, figures whose relationships with Adele are defined not by playful banter, but by deeper disappointment and lasting disdain. As Adele entered her 30 era, her career and personal life had transformed dramatically. She was no longer just the young woman singing heartbreak ballads. She was a global icon, admired for her resilience, authenticity, and refusal to conform to the industry's shallow expectations. But even at this stage of her life, 2 musicians stood out as figures she openly disliked, Nicki Minaj and Lady Gaga. The tension with Nicki Minaj stemmed from an unexpected source, a joke gone wrong. During a late-night interview, Adele playfully rapped Nicki's verse from Kanye West's Monster. The clip went viral, and Nicki herself reacted with laughter, praising Adele's flawless delivery. But what seemed like a light-hearted exchange reportedly soured when industry insiders began suggesting Adele's playful impersonation overshadowed Nicki's original work. Fans flooded social media declaring that Adele had owned the verse more than Nicki herself. According to sources, Minaj grew frustrated with how the narrative played out and later vented privately that Adele stole her thunder. For Adele, the reaction felt unnecessary and petty. While she never addressed the matter publicly, she told friends she thought Nicki was too sensitive and had no desire to collaborate with her. What could have been a fun, supportive moment between 2 powerful women in music instead fizzled into quiet tension, with Adele walking away unimpressed. Lady Gaga, on the other hand, represented a clash of artistic philosophies. Gaga is known for her theatrical reinventions, elaborate costumes, and a career built on shock value as much as music. Adele, by contrast, has always rejected spectacle, focusing entirely on vocals and storytelling. The two stars respected each other from afar for years, but when Gaga reportedly suggested a joint performance, Adele declined, not just once but multiple times. Insiders revealed that Adele considered Gaga's artistry too much like a show and worried their styles would clash. When word got back to Gaga, she was said to be disappointed, even offended, interpreting Adele's refusal as a dismissal of her entire creative identity. From then on, their relationship grew colder. Adele never trashed Gaga publicly, but her repeated rejections and private comments about style over substance made it clear she didn't admire Gaga's approach to music. What makes these final two feuds so fascinating is how they reflect Adele's values. With Nicki Minaj, the conflict was rooted in ego and sensitivity, something Adele has little patience for. With Lady Gaga, it was about philosophy, a fundamental disagreement over what music should be. Adele believes music should stand on its own, without the distraction of theatrics or reinvention, and she has built her entire career on that principle. For her, Gaga embodied the opposite, and while she respected her success, she couldn't embrace her artistry. By the end of this journey through 6 musicians Adele reportedly hated, a clear picture emerges. Her dislikes weren't random or fueled by petty jealousy. They reflected her values: respect, authenticity, and honesty. She clashed with Noel Gallagher for his dismissiveness, with Katy Perry for her reliance on spectacle, with Madonna for her criticism, with Damon Albarn for his cruel words, with Chris Brown for his arrogance, and with Nicki Minaj and Lady Gaga for what she saw as unnecessary drama and over-the-top artistry. Each feud tells us more about Adele herself, a woman unwilling to bend to industry pressures, unafraid to speak her mind, and always fiercely protective of her integrity. In the end, Adele's rivalries only reinforced her place as one of the most authentic voices in music. She never chased controversy, but when it found her, she handled it with the same unfiltered honesty that made her a star. And perhaps that's why fans love her even more, because Adele, whether she's belting a ballad or calling out a fellow musician, is always unapologetically real.